dream today. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
What makes people remember a line from a speech? Better yet, why do some speeches stand the test of time while others are forgotten shortly after they're given? The answer is rhetoric. Now you might be wondering, what is rhetoric? Simply, rhetoric is language designed to have a persuasive effect on its audience. However, the real building blocks of strong rhetoric and great speeches are called rhetorical devices. Rhetorical devices are tricks that you can use to make your language more memorable and powerful to have a greater impact on your reader. You actually already know 3 rhetorical devices. I'll give you a hint. They rhyme with Legos. If you guessed ethos, pathos, and logos, you're right. All 3 of those are actually rhetorical devices. They are fairly broad devices, but these 3 can make for strong speeches. The truly memorable lines come from more precise uses of language. We're going to look closely at 8 different devices. Number 1, rhetorical questions. Have you ever been in a situation where someone asks a question and when you respond, they look at you like, "What are you doing?" It's probably because they actually asked a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that doesn't require an answer. It is asked simply to make the audience think or to emphasize a point. For example, if you were trying to persuade the audience to donate to a food bank, you might ask them, "When was the last time you went 24 hours without food?" You don't expect an answer. That's a rhetorical question. Number 2, analogy. An analogy is a special type of comparison that helps to illustrate your point. Think of it like some sort of weird math problem where A plus B is equal to C plus D. Let's put some words to this. Say your parents threaten to take away your phone. You could try to convince your parents that your phone is to you what a map is to a hiker. You'd be completely lost without it. Do you see how that works? By using an analogy, you are making a comparison and connection that helps prove your point. Number 3, simile. A simile is a comparison between 2 objects that uses like or as. We've all heard of this, but how can it be used in an argument? Pretend you are in a debate over whether or not governments are efficient. If you wanted to argue that governments aren't efficient, you could say, "Governments are just like cages full of wild animals." This help paints a picture of governments as inefficient by portraying them and comparing them to some sort of zoo. Number 4, metaphor. A metaphor is kind of like a simile, but it doesn't compare the object, it just says that they are one and the same. For example, if you say, "the shackles of injustice," you are saying that injustice and shackles, or handcuffs, are the exact same thing. Some other examples of this can include things like the following. His medical bill was a dagger to his financial security. Or, the quicksands of racial injustice. See how these help to paint a picture that could be used to support a point? That's a metaphor. Number 5, parallelism. This is a fun one. Parallelism is the repeated use of a sentence structure to make a point. For example, let's say you were trying to emphasize how good your favorite athlete is. Instead of just saying, "they're really good," you could say, "they are the greatest athlete in the entire league, in the entire world, in the entire universe." Notice how you repeated the same structure by starting each item with "in the entire." This can help you your point to be more memorable to the reader. To help you remember, think about parallelism the same way you think about parallel lines in math. They have the same structure. Number 6, repetition. Now, repetition is going to sound like parallelism, but they are slightly different. Typically, repetition is just the repeated use of a word or phrase. This help drives home a specific point. For example, when Martin Luther King talked about the future of America, he repeated the word dream over and over to really drive home his vision. Using repetition like this can really help focus your reader on a specific idea. Number 7, allusion. An allusion is a reference to a significant event, person, etc. This could be something current or something from history. Let's say I was trying to prove that someone was not a good person. I could call them Brutus to allude to the person who stabbed Caesar in the back. If I wanted to make something that seemed good sound really bad, I could call it a Trojan horse. The thing with illusions is that you have to know what they're referencing to really get them. Number 8, anecdote. An anecdote is a short story that is used to make a point. If a doctor is trying to convince someone to eat healthier, they could tell a story about one of their patients who died at a young age because they only ate junk food. This story would be the anecdote that they were using to make their point. Okay, let's review. Number 1, a rhetorical question is one that is asked to make a point, not to be answered.
Number 2, an analogy is where you say that A plus B is equal to C plus D. It's a comparison between two connections to make a point.
Number 3, a simile is a comparison that uses like or as. Number 4, a metaphor is a connection between two objects that makes them sound like they are part of the other. Parallelism is where you use similar phrases or sentence parts to emphasize a point. Repetition is where you use a repeated word or phrase to help the reader focus on an idea. Number 7, an allusion is where you reference an important event, person, etc. for a specific reason. Number 8, an anecdote is a short story that you tell to make an audience agree with your view. While there are many more rhetorical devices, there are a few that will help you get started down your road of persuasion, fame, glory, and eventually world domination. Have fun with them!